I don't have to tell you that as orthodontists, we wear many hats. Clinician, educator, team leaders, businessmen and businesswomen, but we're almost always entrepreneurs. Join us today as we talk to a rising star in the industry. I think he's already risen, hitting on innovation, invention, and everything in between. The one, the only, Dr. Chris Cetta. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. Our Golden Age of Orthodontics podcast sponsors make it possible for us to bring you new episodes. Dental monitoring is making orthodontic treatment smarter. DM Insights provides clear analytics on clinical operations and practice workflow. You can measure and enhance the effectiveness of your protocols, all while creating a new standard in patient experience and practice efficiency. Lightforce Orthodontics is revolutionizing orthodontic care with cutting-edge custom bracket technology that offers personalized digital treatment plans that are fast, precise, and uniquely tailored to your patient's needs. Take advantage of the new standard of care with 3D printed, fully customized brackets combined with indirect bonding and digital planning. You can learn a lot more and take advantage of some special offers by visiting our partner page at pplpractice.com.
The future of orthodontics is evolving and changing every day. But although the way to achieve practice growth has changed, there's never been a better time to be an orthodontist. Let's get into the minds of industry leaders, forward-thinking orthodontists, and technology insiders to learn how they see the future of the orthodontic specialty. How will digital orthodontics, artificial intelligence, clear aligner therapy, remote monitoring, in-house printing, and other innovations change the way you practice? Join your hosts, Dr. Leon Klempner and Amy Epstein, each month as they bring you insights, tips, and guest interviews focused on helping you capitalize on the opportunities for practice growth. And now, welcome to the Golden Age of Orthodontics with the co-founders of People and Practice, Dr. Leon Klempner and Amy Epstein.
Welcome to the Golden Age of Orthodontics. I am Leon Klempner, board-certified orthodontist, retired after 38 years of private practice. I'm currently Director of Orthodontics at Mount Sinai Hospital, part-time faculty at Harvard Ortho, and the CEO of People in Practice. As always, I'm joined by my partner, my daughter, and my co-host, Amy Epstein.
I love that setup. The my this, my that. Amy Epstein here. I'm very pleased to be with you today, especially because I'm excited about our guest. A little bit about myself. I have 20 years of marketing and public relations experience, working with large brands and working with small local practices like yours. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, who is Dr. Chris Cetta, who we've known for a very long time. Just a little bit of background about Chris. He is a board-certified orthodontist practicing at Blue Wave Orthodontics in Tampa and in Bradenton, Florida. He speaks regularly on orthodontic products and innovation, and you may already know his voice from the Illuminate Orthodontics podcast. He's a fellow podcaster. Dr. Cetta also invented precision aligner buttons, which you may know from Dynaflex, and he's an active member of the Clinical Advisory Council of the JCO. His work has been featured in lots of leading publications, including the JCO, Orthotown, Orthodontic Products, and he lives in sunny St. Pete with his wife, Nicole, and his dog, Jagger. Chris, it is great to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm delighted. Thank you so much for that warm and glowing introduction, both of you.
Well, it's always good to see you.
Yeah,
likewise. Can I just say very quickly, this is my favorite part of the podcast, is just how unscripted sometimes the introductions are and the father-daughter banter that goes on. It's a little different every time, but it's great.
Well, we appreciate hearing that. That's for sure. Especially from a fellow podcaster like yourself.
Exactly.
Yes. And longtime listener. So thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah. And by the way, if anybody doesn't know, Illuminate Orthodontic Podcast, you can get that on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you consume your podcasts. You definitely want to listen to Chris. He brings some valuable guests. And speaking of valuable guests, well, first of all, Chris, let me ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
How does it feel to be on the other side of the microphone?
Great question. I still get a little bit nervous being a guest on a podcast. I think I'm just so comfortable being the interviewer that there's like that little bit of the element of the unknown of being the interviewee. So even for someone who's so comfortable and used to being on the mic, I still get a little bit of butterflies. But I don't.
Well, I would say you have a great face for radio, but you also have a great face for video. So.
Thank you, Leon. That's my line. That's why I don't do any video.
All right. Well, you're looking good here.
Likewise.
So let me ask you something, podcaster to podcaster. So we do a lot of interviews, but so do you. So let me ask you, what are some of your most memorable interviews that you've done on your podcast?
Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, for me, as you may know, or some of the listeners may know, for whatever reason, I decided we're going to do all these podcasts in person. So they sort of become a unique experience in that I typically will get to spend some time with the guest, whether we have, dinner beforehand or get to have a cup of coffee and chat. So really, I think all of them, in a sense, are memorable and just some hilarious sort of behind the scenes moments from them. But off the top of my head, one that just really sticks out was the AAO in Miami. And I remember the two of you were there. We did a live podcast from a speakeasy at the AAO. And that one was just such a cool experience. I expected there to be about 2 people in the audience. It was a much bigger turnout. I think we had about 200 people.
It was packed. I mean, it was a party in there. It was really
it was
incredible.
So much fun. It was really special for me because just like I'm sure you work with a lot of your team, just with the podcast and people in practice remotely, we got the whole team together. So my audio engineer, Skylar, is in New Jersey. He came down to Miami. And then the gentleman that plays music, the piano for our podcast, is in England. So he came over and it was just such a great panel. We had John Pham, Adam Schulhoff, and Alfred Griffin. And that was a great one. And another one that comes to mind is, of course, the great Dr. David Sarver, who's a mentor of mine. So that one was really special. It was during COVID. At the time, people weren't really flying. So my wife and I took a road trip from Tampa, Florida to Birmingham, drove all the way there. We sat outside because, this was before vaccines, 6 feet apart on the rooftop of a hotel and recorded a podcast up there. So really fun memory. If people are interested, please check out the podcast archives.
Very cool. Yeah, that was that. Just going back to Miami, it was very cool as podcasters to see another podcast being recorded just on the outside, not be a guest, not be the host, just watch another podcast. And it was especially interesting because it was a party and there were lots of people around. And then as soon as the podcast started, everybody was tuned in and it was quiet and listening. And it was just, it was a feat from an sound engineering perspective, I'm sure. But it was such a cool thing to watch that come to life.
Thank you, Amy. And I'm so excited that both of you came to that. That was awesome. And, to your point, I don't think we really totally, we sort of talked about that. Like, hey, we're doing a podcast at a bar. Is it going to get noisy? So, we did talk to the bartenders and you can't be like shaking cocktails and this and that.
Clinking
and the other
glasses, breaking things.
Right.
All the usual.
But, somehow, and again, credit to Skylar, making that sound presentable. All things considered, I mean, that was pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, let's shift gears. So we've known each other a long time now. And so we've watched you, be an entrepreneur in so many different ways. And one of those ways is you've invented something, which is very cool. So you co-invented the precision aligner button, which is now licensed by Dynaflex. Let me take a step back. You co-invented that with Dr. Richard Kaye, who's an orthodontist who practices in Morristown and Mount Holly, New Jersey. We've known him as long as we've known you, really, which is about 12 years, and wonderful person as well. What motivated the two of you to co-invent this technology, and if you have any advice to other aspiring orthodontic inventors, people who are like, this could be done better, differently, whatever, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, for sure. Great question, Amy. So, I co-invented, or we'll say inventing loosely because it is a button, or co-created a product that is for aligners, and it's a certain bondable button that really the product was the first bondable button to be used with aligners. As Leon knows, that orthodontists were certainly wearing elastics with Invisalign and other aligners previously, but we were taking parts really intended for braces and adapting them to use with aligners. So people were using, Kaplan hooks, lingual bondable buttons, 7 tubes. And the problem with those, Leon, as you know, is that they're really meant for the center of the tooth and not to be bonded in the gingival or cervical third at the gum line there. So, I was practicing with Dr. Rich Kaye, who's, a great friend and mentor of mine. And we'll have to tell the story a little bit of how we all met. And in his practice there, Marone and Kaye Orthodontics, he was a big Invisalign provider. And we were just having a lot of patients coming back with emergency visits. And the issue was these buttons just kept coming off no matter what we did. And the parents were frustrated, patients were frustrated, pulling kids back out of school. People had to take time off of work. And one day it was just one of those eureka moments. I had the idea, well, what if the button were shaped to fit right inside the cutout of Invisalign like a puzzle piece? And I mentioned that to Rich Kaye, and he said, Chris, that's a great idea. You should really patent that or do something with it. And at the time I was associating probably 6 days a week, driving all over the state of New Jersey. And every Monday when I saw him, he would say, Chris, what did you do with that idea? Like I could really use these in the practice. And I said, Rich, I'll be honest, after a month, I'm so busy. This isn't going to happen, but would you want to work on this together? So that's how we sort of developed that partnership. And I'm really glad we did, because we're able to sort of keep each other accountable. Life gets really busy, and having someone to work on this fun sort of like passion project was really invaluable.
You're looking at two people who are working on a passion project right now together, so we get it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, I'm very thankful for Rich and his partnership on that. But just as far as, what we've learned throughout this process, we took, a licensing approach. So, most people have probably heard of licensing. Certainly, if you watch Shark Tank, you think of Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary with licensing. But, we never had the intention of quitting our day job of being orthodontist and going into the button business, right? Where we're trying to manufacture these, sell them out of our garage, fulfill orders. So we knew that we were going to need to partner with a company to sell this product. At the time, I did not know a lot of other orthodontist, quote unquote, inventors. Certainly the Damon Brackett and Dr. Dwight Damon came to mind, Dr. Louis Carrier with his motion appliance, and they had all sort of taken this licensing model. So, it was certainly a really interesting process. I learned a lot. I definitely think it's a great modality or method for orthodontists to take, and we could talk about that a little bit more. But I think the biggest lesson I learned is to get very comfortable with the word no and embrace the word no. Because if you are trying to license your product to another company, you're going to hear no a lot. And you can't let that discourage you. You can't let that, just sort of break your spirit and throw in the towel. Another important thing to learn is that, when you get that no, asking for feedback from people, because you'll really, if you get people to give you honest answers, you can get a lot of valuable insight in how you might be able to change your product or service to make it better along the way. And so, these are all things you have to be really perseverant and nimble to make this happen.
Well, we do get occasional inquiries from some of our podcast listeners that have ideas that they'd like to bring to market. So, the advice that you've just given, I think is one that they'll take to heart. But I just want to rewind back to Richard Kaye, because I love Richard Kaye. And you mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about how we met. You want to just kind of tell our listeners where we first met and how it all evolved from there?
Yeah. Well, again, it was probably 12 years ago, but I was practicing one day a week with Marone and Kaye Orthodontics, which is now Marone, Kaye and Yuka Orthodontics in New Jersey. And really wonderful husband and wife practice. And I believe they were like early clients of yours with people in practice. And that's where we first became acquainted. And, always loved the marketing you did for them. And I think we were maybe at like an Invisalign summit in Las Vegas. Is that correct?
Sounds right. Yep.
And I remember getting together, having a beverage with the two of you, and it was so nice to sit down and chat. And this was, I think, long before the precision buttons, or maybe around the similar time of when we were thinking about it.
For sure. Yeah. That sounds about right in terms of timeline. But yeah, so it's been quite some time, and we still work with Dr. Kaye and now Dr. Yuka and help them market their practice. But yeah, they always say very kind things about you.
Likewise. And this was before any of us were podcasters. Look at that. Did you ever envision being podcasters?
No. Personally, no. Honestly, he came to me, he said, we should do a podcast. And this is, I don't know how many years ago we've been doing this podcast, but quite a few. And he said, we should do a podcast. And, he's full of ideas. He is a quintessential marketer, entrepreneur, orthodontist, just like you. And he said we should do a podcast. I'm telling you, it's going to be great. So I don't know.
The truth of it is, yes, it was my idea. But what I hear back from listeners is that Amy's so great. Amy's so good. I said, yeah, what about me? I said, well, you're good too, but she's exceptional. So I think the credit to our success goes more in Amy's column than in mine, but I do come up with the ideas. Not always great ideas, but I do come up with the ideas.
So you've got the innovative mind there, Leon. And Amy, I was thinking this morning. I was listening to some of your recent episodes, and you just have such a nice, smooth radio voice.
Thanks.
Very well spoken. I love it.
The really fancy mic helps.
Yes,
I suggest that to anybody who wants a really smooth radio voice. Just get the really smooth mic, and it gets you there. So, one quick follow-up question, and then we have a call-in question for you. But the quick follow-up question to what we were talking about before is that, are there any pros and cons of licensing your IP instead of starting your own company? Like, can you think of any, for anyone who has an idea and is bringing it to market?
Yeah, I know we touched on this a little bit before. I think the licensing model is just ideal for orthodontists. You will see a number of orthodontist entrepreneurs out there that have been quite successful. Again, we talked about, John Pham, Adam Schulhoff, Brandon Owen, Alfred Griffin. They've done wonderful things with their products. But we frequently will have this chat about, the whole licensing versus doing a startup company. But, not every orthodontist wants to, quit being a clinician. Really, being a CEO of a company is a full-time job, which any of them can certainly tell you. So, I would suggest keep the day job. Licensing is much less financial risk, right? Putting yourself out there. Another big thing is why not tap into the company's expertise as far as manufacturing the products, right? Rather than trying to sort of learn this all on your own. And as far as regulatory 510K clearance, Europe has all their regulatory and compliance issues, and then think about it from a sales and marketing perspective. You want to get your idea out there. These companies already have sales teams. They have, books of business. They have marketing behind them. So, realize it's going to be a long road to start up a company, and you're in many ways going to reinvent the wheel. Now, of course, there's trade-offs that come with that too, right? So I get a royalty, which is, a small portion of sales in exchange for sort of renting out my idea. That's a trade-off. I think the biggest thing, though, that orthodontists really need to get accustomed to is that your idea sort of becomes your baby in a sense, right? And when you are licensing your idea out, you are sort of giving up that baby, right? That I can't necessarily control how my product is branded or marketed or who it's sold to. Do we want to sell to general dentists? Do we not want to sell to general dentists? You're sort of giving up a lot of those rights unless it's negotiated ahead of time. So, certainly that's a trade-off. Another con of licensing is that potential windfall, that if you were to, sell your company down the road or, there's an equity turn, you could have a huge financial windfall, which, you're probably not going to have with licensing unless you're really selling a lot of product. But I think that model for licensing certainly would fit a lot of people. I get a lot of, would-be inventors or people with ideas reaching out to me, and I certainly try to steer them in that direction.
Let me interject just quickly, since we're talking about inventing stuff and licensing and how to bring it to market. About 20 years ago, I was having frustration with my cases that my early class 3 cases with face mask cooperation. So I figured out an alternative way rather than just putting them on recall and waiting for surgery where, I can make a lower appliance with elastics. And anyway, it was the tandem appliance, which I then published in the JCO and then it became really popular, Dynaflex actually, helped me develop it and they marketed it. And I said, wow, this is great. I was getting calls all over the world that were using it successfully. So I called an attorney and he said, you idiot, you published it. You can't.
I don't think I knew that full story. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't dawn on me to get a patent on it. I thought I just want to make a contribution. But then then I said, well, maybe I can make some money off of this. My patent attorney says, you said you published it? Is that what you said? You mean it's in public domain?
Yes.
Click. And then it was click.
Yes.
That was the end of that.
Well, so I will mention, typically the way public domain works is that you have 6 months from the time that your invention is revealed to the public or marketed to the public to patent it. But at least it was a really nice contribution to the specialty area.
Thank you. So, Amy, do we have a caller? Sometimes we get callers.
We have a caller.
Oh, wow.
It's not just any caller. Not just any caller
special
today.
Caller?
We have a very special caller today.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
We do. We have a caller, and you may have heard of him. Dr. Jonathan Nicozisis has called. And,
oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up. We have a question, and so we're going to listen to it now.
Hey, Chris. It's Jonathan Nicozisis from Princeton, New Jersey, your old home state. I heard you're doing a podcast with Leon, so I decided to throw my hat into the ring and ask you a question or two. And I suppose, we all talk about technology, and I guess it's almost a two-part question, but the direct question is, what new trends in technology, new things on the horizon that makes you most excited about incorporating into your orthodontic practice? But I'm going to throw you a curveball and be a bit more practical about it, because technology is great and it can often be expensive. But I think in this economic climate, with the macroeconomics going on, making it more challenging for case conversions, more challenging for people showing up for their appointments, their new exams, et cetera. My two-part question is, what new trends in technology are you excited about, but what are you going to leverage of those new trends and technologies to help best navigate the macroeconomics, to help really grow your practice with new exams and get people to say yes to treatment rather than yes to a trip to Disney World or summer camp or any other discretionary spending? So looking forward to your answer, wishing you continued success, and thank you so much, Leon, for the opportunity to participate. Bye-bye.
Jonathan, great to hear your voice. Thanks so much for the question. And not old home state, once a Jersey boy, always a Jersey boy. But to answer your question, one of the innovations technologies I'm most excited about is custom braces. I use Lightforce and KLON in my practice. But what I really love about the custom braces is just being able to dial in treatments, the digital workflow, digital treatment planning, shorter treatment times, more efficient visits, even better results, in my opinion. And, just answering the second part of the question too, in terms of, the current macroeconomic environment, I think custom braces, particularly Lightforce, what a differentiator for your practice. Previously it was just aligners, really. Braces haven't really changed much over the last, 10 to 20 years, except for maybe like self-ligation, a couple other variations. But for me, that's a pretty big trend.
All right. Well, as marketers, we really are always looking for ways to differentiate our practices from the competition. Certainly, the technology like Lightforce, which benefits the patient in so many ways, certainly helps to grow practices. So the other would be dental monitoring, for example, that also you can leverage in terms of differentiating your practice. But that's enough ortho for today. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about music. All right. Because I know you love music. I know that you were a bass player. And from what I understand, you were the original Relapse bass player.
That is the rumor.
Once a bass player, like once a Jersey boy. Always a bass player. Just got to correct that in there. There's no was a bass player in there.
Okay. We are talking about the electric bass, right? Not the stand-up orchestra bass, right?
Right.
Okay. Just want to differentiate.
Double bass, whatever you want to call it. Yes.
I'm looking at one right
electric
here.
Bass guitar.
Right here.
Oh,
because my 9-year-old is learning the double bass. So I've got this enormous instrument in front of me over here that she picks up
Someday she'll play with Relapse, so we're hoping that to incorporate that in there. But let me ask you this question. It's a broad question. I'm sure you've been to a lot of concerts, as I have over the years. So, what was your favorite? What sticks out in your mind as most memorable?
Well, I'm glad we're going here, Leon. I know you're a music lover. That's probably my biggest passion and hobby and interest would be music. I started playing guitar in high school, then picked up bass in college when I realized that everybody learned guitar, and I was a short man on the stick there, so I got moved over to bass. But I've played in bands in college, dental school, orthodontic residency. And yes, I was part of Relapse pretty much from the beginning. And so as far as favorite shows, I do like a lot of rock music, particularly classic rock. So one that really sticks out at my mind, New York City, March 2009, Beacon Theater. Got to see the Allman Brothers Band on their 40th anniversary tour, was front row, believe it or not, Leon, was right in front of Greg Allman's B3 organ. And it was Derek Trucks and Warren Haynes in the lineup at the time. So that is probably one of my favorite concerts, a little hard to top. But now I have to ask both of you, since I'm a fellow podcaster, allow me to turn the question around.
Sure. I'll let him answer first because he goes to the Beacon all the time because he lives next to it. Wow. We sometimes see shows at the Beacon together. He goes, by himself or with my mom or whatever. He'll go all the time. So I don't know. What's your?
Well, I'm 4 blocks from the Beacon, so I'm always there. And I might have been at that concert. I've seen the Allman Brothers there. It might not have been that same night as you, but Derek Trucks often appears, so I like following them. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm a big Eric Clapton fan. So I've probably been to, 10 or 15 concerts. Whenever he comes to the New York area, I go there. But, Amy, did you come when we went to see the Rolling Stones?
No, I was the only one not there.
You didn't?
Everybody else came, and I met you for dinner first, and then I had something going on. I don't remember. You went with my friends. My friends were even there, but I wasn't.
Well, a group of us went, in New Jersey, of course, the Meadowlands. So I don't know. I had never seen them before. That was my first time. And Mick Jagger had like heart surgery like 2 months before. And I was just like, I mean, I couldn't believe the energy that man, he's in his 80s, 2 months after surgery. And he was like all over the place, didn't skip a beat. So I'd have to say that's one of the top ones for me.
Super cool. What about you, Amy?
I think that the Eric Clapton concert that you brought me to, I was a teenager. That was that was very impactful because you're like, watch this guy. You have to see him live. He's the most unbelievable musician. And that was great. And then I'll say, this is the second one. My first concert ever was Tiffany. Do you remember Tiffany?
Oh, yeah.
I do. Yeah.
You remember Tiffany? She was the headliner. And you know who opened up for Tiffany? New Kids on the Block. They were literally the New Kids on the Block, and they opened for Tiffany. It was in Nassau, the Garden, I guess, but not the Garden. What was the venue in Nassau County?
Nassau
Coliseum, right?
Yeah.
That's where we saw Tiffany, who was like big, and New Kids on the Block were this like, little group that was getting their first
the opening
chance.
Band.
Well, what about the flowers? What about the flowers?
Yeah. We brought flowers for Tiff. She took the flowers from me and she kissed me on the cheek. We had good seats, I have to say. Yeah, that was cool. That was very
Can't top that.
Can't top that. So on that note,
yes.
Chris, thank you. We really appreciate you being here. You are representative of orthodontists and aspirationally representative of orthodontists in terms of your entrepreneurship, your contributions to the profession, general nice guy. If somebody wants to reach out to you to ask you a question about any of the things we talked about today, what's the best way that they might be able to reach you?
Absolutely. Feel free to shoot me an email. My email is drcetta, drcetta @gmail.com. On all the Facebook platforms. So that's another good way of getting a hold of me. Although I don't always check my LinkedIn messages, just because I get spams like everyone else. But yeah, those would be a great way. And feel free to reach out. Would love to help you with your idea or thought for an orthodontic product. And I just want to quickly say thank you, Amy and Leon. Thank you for everything you do for our profession, having this podcast. I'm a longtime listener, really enjoy it, and keep up the great work.
Appreciate that, Chris. Well, if anyone wants to listen to other episodes of this podcast or to Chris's podcast, you can subscribe or download other episodes on all the podcast streaming platforms, Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, if you want to see our faces, or wherever you get podcasts. And if you enjoyed it, we'd encourage you to share your thoughts with a colleague. For more information about people in practice, you can visit our website at pplpractice.com and reach out to us there.
And again, thanks again, Chris, and thanks everybody out there for watching and listening. You can tell we like doing this podcast, so it's a lot of fun for us. And if you want to contact me, you can reach me at leon@pplpractice.com. We are a marketing company. And on that note, visit our partner page where you can get special deals with both LifeForce and dental monitoring, both mentioned on the podcast earlier. But remember, if you're a forward-thinking orthodontist, it has never been a better time to be an orthodontist. We're in the golden age. Take advantage of it. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Golden Age of Orthodontics. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or visit our website at thegoldenageoforthodontics.com for direct links to both the audio and video versions of this episode.